do you guys do anything other than hand people like towelettes and wear masks? Like honestly, like maybe they have skeleton staff from all the layoffs, but I was kind of like put off. Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jessica and I created dolledupbyj. So in today's video, this is highly requested. It's taken me a while to actually remember to do. In this video, I'm going to talk about all about my experience, what it was like to travel during the pandemic. So this is not to be taken wrong. This is just my experience of how certain things went, where I went, what the airports were like, etc. All the restrictions are just what I went through, what it was like. It's just meant to be storytime video, discussion topic. Do not take it the wrong way. I live in Canada, and this summer all Canadians were basically allowed to travel to certain countries because we managed our cases really well back then. Summer was, I never even imagined to happen, and it was incredible. So basically what happened this summer is Europe opened the borders to Canadians to travel because our cases were so low, and I didn't know if I was going to go at first. I couldn't decide, and then I was like, well, you know what, the borders are open to Canadians. There is nothing that says unless you are an essential worker you can't go. They literally said Canadians are allowed to come for tourism, and although the government said you shouldn't leave unless it was for essential purposes, I kind of figured if they decided that it was safe enough for Canadians to come, and as long as you took the precautions, sanitize, mask, etc., what difference was it than me staying at home and seeing all the beaches in Vancouver having literal fiestas? Like, it was insanity. There was like videos all over the news. There was like thousands of people on the beaches in Vancouver this summer, not giving a fuck about anything, disregarding all the restrictions, having picnics, all this crazy stuff. There was also just like in any store you went, like people stand so near you, the lines were just crazy. It honestly was like, I just want to get out of here in a way. Like, it was like, there was just so much going on. When I left, it was, there's like a small group of us going into the airport. It was completely a ghost town, like completely dead, and just unlike anything I'd ever seen in YVR. It was a total ghost town. And it was funny because like there was a group of us, they honestly made us feel like we were doing something so wrong by leaving. They're like, why are you leaving? Like, why are you leaving the country? Like, what are you doing going to Spain? Like, what do you have there? Like, they were just like question. It was just weird. I was like, well, we're like legally allowed to leave. There's nothing saying we can't leave. Like, yeah, we're going on a holiday. And they're like, you're going on a holiday during a pandemic? And I'm like, yes, I know. Like, please make me feel more shitty. So my flying experience from YVR went to Frankfurt. The airplane itself, we were in business class and it was completely dead, luckily. Like, I was like so sketched to go on an airplane. I was like, honestly, not even sketched out of going to Europe. I was sketched out about the airplane. But then I was reading about how like the air, they allow new air like every 2 minutes into the plane. It's constantly like refreshing itself, which is a big misconception. Everyone thinks it's recirculating. It's not. So the whole area there was completely empty, and the plane itself wasn't very full at all. The flight attendants were wearing masks. You had to wear a mask while you're on the plane, of course. What I found was really disturbing though, considering we're also in business class, was like certain things on the seats were not clean. Like, they would hand you a towelette when you got on, and I was like, I'm sorry, like these tickets are like not cheap and you're giving me a towelette. You guys should be like completely cleaning everything perfectly. And then there was certain, like, you know, when you open up your table on the plane, there was like a coffee spill on mine, and I was like, seriously, like, you guys don't check this stuff, and it's a pandemic. And it's just like, we flew with Lufthansa and like their service was good, but I was honestly kind of like, you're supposed to have all these news releases about how you're doing all these hygiene standards and everything's supposed to be like immaculate. And I was like, do you guys do anything other than hand people like towelettes and wear masks? Like, honestly, like maybe they have skeleton staff from all the layoffs, but I was kind of like put off. And then flying from in Frankfurt, honestly though, that airport was like, I had a layover connection, Frankfurt to then Mallorca. The airport there, it was like Christmas time. It was like fucking busy. And I was like, okay, this is a little sketch. I was like tightening my mask. I was like hand sanitizer after like every fucking move. I didn't even want to like eat in that airport. I was like, oh my God, there was just so many people. Like, it was nuts. It was crazy. And then the plane was like pretty full. It was a smaller plane to get onto that island. And I was just like, oh my God, like this is kind of scary. And then when we get there, everyone is supposed to wear like masks when they're outside in the streets. We saw people like getting tickets for not wearing masks. Everywhere we went, it was like masks, sanitizer, everything like that. We were in like a smaller private group the whole time, which was good. We didn't really like mingle with anyone. That wasn't the point. It was like literally meant to be like a set group trip, and like staying in Spain around Mallorca, which was lovely, and kind of like cruising all around. And we had like our own yacht, which was like literally next level amazing, and there was no reason to really like leave it. Sometimes we went on land and would go for dinner. Some of the restaurants were sketchy, honestly, like there wasn't really social distancing happening, and some were. We noticed a lot of time like the servers, they'd all wear masks, but then half the time they would like lower their mask to talk, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, please, like, you know, or they would have their nose sticking out, and I was like, have you guys not seen the guides from like the World Health Organization saying you need to cover both, and they're like pulling it down? I was just like, oh my God. But it was, I'm honestly like so happy to have gone anyways. It was amazing. So the first leg of the trip, I was in Spain, and that was honestly probably the most strict I saw that they were about the masks. Like everywhere we went, they would be like mask, mask, mask. And also like every store, when you get up from a table in a restaurant, you had to put a mask on, go to the bathroom, etc. Obviously, within the table, you have to be with your own group. A lot of restaurants as well during the day didn't have any loud music on because they didn't want people dancing. There were certain restaurants in like Formentera that like the one on the beach, I forget the name, it's like the restaurant in Formentera. So beautiful, stunning. And but yeah, they started putting music on, and you can tell this is a party place. There's like magnums of champagne on display like everywhere. And there was like big groups though. They allowed big groups. There was like big groups of like 10, 15, like 12 people like all over the place. But then when the music started, people were like, yeah, and they shut it off right away. So that's the thing, is they were allowing groups, but the restaurant was like so open air and the tables were so far apart. I didn't really feel like sketch, but I was also like, holy crap, there's like a couple hundred people here, like no joke. Honestly, cruising around Spain, it was like very private. I didn't feel like really I was doing anything to endanger anyone. We were always taking precautions, masks, sanitizers, etc. And then just staying to our own group and not like mixing people, not like inviting random people, whatever. So that was great. I was in Spain for about 3 weeks, and then in between the yacht went to a beautiful hotel in the hills in Mallorca. It was honestly like stunning and just so like a fairy tale. It was so wonderful. It was very just like beautiful. The hotel I think was at only 30% capacity. I never once was I like, oh my God, this is sketchy, I shouldn't be here. Like, you know, like there was always seats by the pool. To get to your room, it was like through like outside stairs. There was like different like suites you walk up to, different levels, which was cool. So it was never like congested or anything like that. Honestly, like I felt like the first part of that trip was like, I dealt with less people personally than being at home in Vancouver. After Spain, we went to Milan, and Milan was like, it was interesting. The airport was dead again when we arrived. The plane was very, very quiet, but it was weird because they had this whole like mandatory COVID testing center, and they had people taking your temperature and everything. And I was like, okay, cool, awesome, like I'm down. And we filled out these huge booklets on the plane that were like a bit poorly translated, so it was a bit hard to understand some of the English. And then there was all these like, if this is option A, circle C and D. And then if you circle D, circle this. And then it was like, what the fuck? It was like this whole roundabout on this form that they didn't even look at. And then they were like, oh, you need to put your quarantine address. But there was no quarantine order for Italy. So we're like, what do you mean quarantine address? Like, we're going to Italy for like a week. Like, we have you to quarantine for 2 weeks? Like, what? We were like, oh my God, we have to change our whole plan? Like, what's going on? And then we get there, and like the COVID testing center is not even open. The airport is pretty dead. I think we're the only flight that arrived like in the last like day. And then there's these two ladies that are doing temperature checks, and we're supposed to hand them these customs forms. We hand them our forms, and the thermometers are just sitting beside them, and they're just like, we're like, oh, okay, like, sure. And then there's literally one customs agent. There's not even like a security area to go through. Like, we just get our bags, and there's a customs agent like literally like by the door. Like, we could see the taxis outside. He was just like, what are you guys doing in Milan? We're like, we're just here for holiday. And they're like, where do you come from? How much money do you have? And he was like, okay, bye. He literally didn't, like, they didn't do anything about COVID. They didn't ask anything. It was just weird. It was like so dead. It was like literally the most lax experience. And coming from YVR, where they were like, why are you leaving the country? Like, to being in Italy being like, okay, peace out. Oh, no temperatures, whatever. COVID testing closed. It was just like, okay. Like, it was literally, we could have said we came from like anywhere and they wouldn't have cared. They didn't even stamp my passport. I got like no passport stamps the whole trip. I was like, come on guys, I want to fill my passport up. And while in Italy, honestly, like everything was kind of like business as usual. Like some people wearing masks, but it wasn't mandatory. It wasn't required. Although if you did go to a restaurant, you had to enter wearing a mask. Same deal when you go to the bathroom, put a mask on, sit at the same table. But there was honestly like, we didn't see any plexiglass in restaurants or anything, which like, honestly, I kind of questioned the effectiveness of that and if that even does anything. Also, what I question the effectiveness of is those fucking masks with that are just a shield where your entire mouth underneath is exposed. Like, I'm sorry, what is that doing? What is that doing to help anything? Like, I can't. I can't. But yeah, Milan was totally awesome. And then from Milan, we went to Monaco and we drove. Monaco was like so awesome, but we drove and it was funny because obviously when you're going in between Europe, you're going through borders, but they just like waved us through. I know obviously because it's European Union now, they don't really do border control, but I thought because of COVID, they would have, you know what I mean? Just to check like, okay, where are people coming from and where are they entering? You know, because obviously we're coming from Milan, but like, what if we had been driving all day from like a crazy country that had been affected? They literally did zero border control. Like they had no idea where we could have come from. So I was like, okay, that's weird. And then at the hotel, like everything was totally same, just like wear a mask around. But again, no plexiglass anywhere. Restaurants were totally normal. Just wear a mask. Tables didn't really have social distancing though. Like people were pretty close to us, which was a little bit sketchy. And yeah, it was kind of like business as usual almost, but not as busy apparently as it normally is. But it was still really, really cool to see. But there were some bars down by the harbor that were really busy with people drinking. And I was like, honestly, like, I'm not going there. I was like, I don't feel comfortable. Like there are people literally like sardined to like different groups beside each other. And it was packed. And it'd be like high top tables with groups standing around, another group beside them, another group beside them. And I was like, okay. After Monaco, went to Switzerland, which was amazing. And we did fly private. So with that, there wasn't really like, honestly, any questions or anything. It was just like, okay, you have a mask, great. They didn't even make us wear a mask on the plane. I think the staff was wearing masks. It was just like super smooth. It was like, they didn't care really. They were like, okay, you're coming from here, you're going there. And then when we arrived in Switzerland, there was like no customs to be heard of. It was just like, you came from here, cool, passports, great, go. It was weird. It was like almost everything we see in the news was kind of like all these regulations. I don't know, like they weren't really being enforced from my experience, from like flying multiple airports, driving, flying private. So traveling all these different methods, and like no one really seemed to give a fuck, honestly, other than leaving Canada. Like, for real. Switzerland didn't enforce masks in the streets, anything like that. It was just restaurant based. And they did get really mad though in the hotel sometimes if I forgot, because I would like get up to have like, go to the bathroom from the table and leave it on the table, and I'd have to like go back and I'd be like, I'm sorry. It's just like, it's different. Like we didn't have to wear them at home like at all. So it was just totally different to me. Yeah, then after Switzerland, went to Germany for a long time. And loved every minute of it. It was amazing. It's so beautiful. It was my first time going, and it was great to practice my German because I do know some German, and it was great just to be immersed and just learn so much about the culture, get to see some family, which is like amazing because normally like I can't see them and like it's hard for them to visit, so it's really good. But yeah, in Munich it was like everything was honestly locking down in the end, and things were starting to close at 10. And even the hotel, like you couldn't order like alcohol or anything past 10 o'clock. They shut it all down. And then a few weeks later, they went down to 9. And then after that, they like shut all the restaurants down for like a 2-week period because their cases got so bad. My experience traveling during COVID, there was probably more precautions in public in general, like with the whole masks and the mask protocol with the restaurants than there was in Vancouver in a weird way. And I feel like a lot of people were like, oh my God, you're going to Europe during a pandemic. Like, are you crazy? And I was like, well, I'm sorry, are you crazy? Like, you're going to a beach fiesta every fucking day. You're going to a party at the park. You're going to this. Like, not to say everyone was, but I just like Vancouver in general, kind of like they shut down the economy and like affected so many people's livelihoods by shutting down all the restaurants and all the stores. And meanwhile, people were like partying everywhere. And it was just so shit. It was just stupid. And then going to Europe, it's like all still open. There's just more regulations with the masks and everything. So it was really interesting. We got a few tests throughout the trip as well, because like just to know, like we didn't want to be like bringing anything from somewhere, even though it wasn't required, and just for like peace of mind. But yeah, overall, definitely experience that like I'm extremely grateful for, and I don't regret it for a second. And we took every precaution. And we did everything that was completely legal from what the government recommended. Europe opened to tourists from Canada. Now they've closed temporarily because all the cases went back up again. But that was just my experience traveling during COVID. And it's interesting to see things on the news that are so like, almost like blown out of proportion. And then when you're like out and about and you're at the airport, they're just like, whatever, whatever, whatever. You know what I mean? It's like what you hear versus what you actually experience. Oh, also, I should say my quarantine experience. My quarantine experience was like, honestly, there's so many people that were like, there are gonna be people checking up on you, and they're gonna be like calling your house at all hours and knocking on your door and making sure you're there. And like, if you're not there, you're gonna get like this huge fine. It was literally none of that. It was like, I got 2 calls from the government. One was 4 days into it, and another one was like 10 days into it. And literally it was just some person like reading off a sheet being like, okay, hi, I'm calling from the government, blah, blah, blah. Do you have a few minutes? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, is this mandatory? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And then they were just like, okay, do you have any symptoms? I was like, no. And they were like, do you have any hardship getting any medication or food to your place? And I was like, no. And they were like, do you have any questions? No. And they were like, okay, I'm gonna read you a thing. And I was like, okay. And then they'd be like, okay, thank you, have a nice day. And it was like a 2-minute call, like literally 2 minutes. And then not once did anyone ever like knock on my door. And then I would get emails every day though from the government being like, you are subject to mandatory 14-day quarantine. But it was the same email over and over again, like every second day. And that was all, that was literally all. So it's actually crazy because like, if I had gone outside, like, I don't know, they would have never known, you know what I mean? But I didn't, because I was like, obviously trying to be respectful. That is like all the guidelines, duh. And yeah, it was just very strange. And I feel like there was a lot more like fear mongering than needed to be. Yeah, it's just like a crazy world out there right now. And I really hope that everyone can be together for Christmas to some capacity throughout this whole time. It's just like so nuts. And I think we're all over it, and we're all over 2020, and we all want to see something brighter for the next year and hopefully get to travel to more places. Like even I know people right now that are like going to Mexico and the States, and like I don't even know how they're getting into the States from Canada, but I know of people that are there, which I probably shouldn't say. And then people going to Mexico, like Mexico is open to tourism and Canadians can go there too. But then when you come back, you have to do the 2-week quarantine. But yeah, that is my whole experience traveling during a pandemic, and I hope it was informative and insightful and interesting. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Oh, there's a shirt there, one sec. I have some baby hairs that like don't know where they belong, and that's happening right now, so I'm dealing with that. First, my flying experience. I should cut back the video. It's all a blur. Oh God, that's bad.